Welcome everybody to the League of Legends DFS strategy show presented by Awesemo.com. I'm Alex Baker, joined today by Jeremy Schritt, aka Pick'em Genius, and Jay Kari, aka Jay Kari. Tonight, very special night. We got the LCK returning from its spring break, and we got 4-game slate tonight. And I think we're going to see a lot of these larger slates going forward. So, guys, how are you doing today?
Yeah, it's a good night. You said LCK is back, which means less opportunities to split 100 ways by getting first, more chances of splitting one or two, or even getting a solo win now. So that's cool. Like it, big fan.
Yeah, exciting for the bigger slates. So more low-end guys to get you some tournament winning scores.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we might see less than 50 people split first tonight. So that's something to look forward to. If you want to see less ties, hit the thumbs up button. That helps us a lot in the YouTube algorithm too. And we're also sponsored by Super Draft. They have great PGA, NASCAR, and MMA contests going right now. So make sure to check out Super Draft. All right, so we've had the LPL going on for a couple of weeks, so we have some samples to work with there, but the LCK coming back tonight. Now, the LCK tends to be a little bit more strategic, a little less kills, or in some cases, a lot less. And the dynamic last season was that there were a couple of LCK teams that were pretty high kills, but the rest, it's like a little bit less likely to crack the winning lineup. So, Jeremy, what are you expecting this season from the LCK?
Yeah, from what I hear from like casters and stuff, they like really angry about the LCK kind of being a stagnant league. I don't think much will change, especially with the teams we have tonight. Well, at least one of the games we have tonight. Those teams should be pretty like similar because they didn't make any roster changes. But yeah, I don't expect the LCK to like be the LPL all of a sudden. They should still be like trying to outsmart you instead of outkill you.
Nice. Yeah, so Jake, what has your experience been in these LCK LPL tournaments last season?
Yeah, I mean, so right when the quarantine started, I mean, people were just hammering lineups, probably just using your projections while they're free for a while. And so like they were mostly on the right plays, but you would get some of these double stacked LCK teams, which probably weren't great lineups when there weren't a ton of people playing. The tournaments weren't huge. So like my strategy right away was, okay, LPL was like a higher scoring league. So you just play those teams, right? And then it was pretty soft at first, but now that people have caught on to that, I think maybe the hate on some of these LCK teams in certain situations is probably going to go too far. You're going to get teams that are too low owned based on their chances of having relative success.
Definitely, yeah. So maybe the pendulum has swung the other way, and the Korean teams aren't as popular. Now, there's a very different dynamic with the rosters, and we have to talk about that up front because this is huge for playing DFS. The China teams, they release their starting lineups very early, like 24 hours in advance, oftentimes. Or I guess it's more like 12 hours, but you know who's starting. And you need to make sure you check that because there are guys you don't expect that are starting pretty much every night. And there's some examples of that tonight. Now, the LCK, like, they only release starting lineups if they're leaked, and that happens about an hour before the game. So tonight, Sandbox and Africa Freaks tips at like 3 a.m. Central. So if you're up for that, which I'm not going to be, I'll tell you right away, then you can get an edge by just playing the right guys because like people are going to be playing these teams and they're not going to have the guys that are starting. Now, Jeremy, this slate tonight has some interesting dynamics because I think the lineups are a little bit easier to predict than we might normally see, especially with the Freak of Freaks and Sandbox being two teams that switch up their starting lineup a lot. But I'm sure you've been following these teams a lot closer than me. So what's your take on how we should approach this slate?
So yeah, you mentioned that for me, it's fortunate that the Africa and Sandbox are the first LCK game because those two teams are like the two teams I'm most scared of rostering, because they will just wholesale changes for, I think, no reason. They obviously have reasons, but they're very scary. So hopefully we do get that information. I think Afrika kind of settled on the roster down the stretch, so I don't expect a lot difference from their last few games in spring. Sandbox has a new coach. He's not there. It's the first Western coach for an LCK team. But yeah, he's not there yet. So I have less of an idea of what Sandbox is going to do. But they should. I also don't think that anything crazy will happen on their end though. Yeah.
So let me tell you my logic here is that Sandbox was in this relegation tournament or the promotion tournament, and they ran out the same lineup for every single match, and then they won in the end and kept their spot in the LCK where Griffin got demoted. Now, I was thinking that because they are carrying this winning streak, at least not being relegated, that they just roll the same lineup as they have been, but I don't truly understand the dynamics of the team and why they chose those guys, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. But what do you think about that? Because what if we just go off the last games they played? Is that a good indication of who's going to play?
It's probably not a bad indication. I'm trying to see if anything's on their Twitter right now to indicate anything. I'm not seeing anything crazy. I'm seeing a lot of streaming schedules, but that doesn't mean anything. So if I had to guess, it would probably just be those same 5 guys though. But I will be awake at 1 a.m. So yeah, just be cautious still. But I would guess that the same 5 guys that won the promotion tournament will be the same 5 guys that play tonight.
Jake, what are you doing about these starting lineups? Because they're kind of hard to predict. And are you gonna stay up and make sure you got the right guys?
I don't know. I mean, because the games are the LCK games are 3 hours apart. So I guess if you wanted to go to sleep, I'm trying to think about what I'm gonna do. Maybe stay up for the first one, sleep a little, wake up for the second one, and see if got any live lineups that I need to make any swaps in if there are any surprises. Or I don't know. It's probably not optimal, but you could fade these games looking at the top stack tool, which is something I use religiously. I mean, these teams all have pretty low chance of being the top stack, pretty significant chance that it's going to be one of or 2 of the LPL teams that ends up taking it down. So if you don't want to wake up, I mean, it's probably not the end of the world, but you're definitely giving up some of your edge if you have one.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that fading the 2 teams is a reasonable option because you can make a lot of great lineups without either team. And then if you really want to take your strategy to the next level, staying up for the starting lineups, especially because there are going to be so many dead lineups with these teams, trying to guess the starting lineups. But I do actually really like playing the team position of each of these 2 teams. Nice. And that you don't have to guess. So as a one-off, maybe people don't play the right players, but then the team spot kind of gives you some differentiation. So that's one strategy I'm using. Now for the next game, we have Dragon X and T1, I believe. So these are 2 of the best teams in the LCK. So Dragon X especially, they run the same lineup every single night pretty much. T1, they have a jungle rotation that I can never figure out, but Elim seems to be let me hold my projections here because I don't want to say the wrong thing. But okay, so Cuz starts most of the games and Elim is their backup jungler. But I don't really know much about the 2 guys. So Jeremy, what's your take on their jungle situation?
I would just expect Cuz, if I get burned by LM playing, it's the first series of the split. Cuz is better. He's the more veteran player. They're playing a really good DRX team. I would just expect Cuz to play, and I feel pretty comfortable. I'd say 90% plus chance that Cuz plays.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to hear because we're going to be guessing about this one. and having good odds that helps a lot. So now that we kind of talked about like how we're gonna figure out who's playing, now we should talk about who we're gonna pick. Like, so Jake, how are you gonna approach this team or the slate? Like, what teams are you looking at right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, well, the team that's going to be the chalk, Invictus Gaming, they're going to be major chalk, and it doesn't look like too bad of a play. I mean, their salary's not outrageous. They're not even the most expensive team on the slate, on average, based on the lineups that we have in. And so, I'm fine playing them, but a team that's actually sticking out to me is the team that they're going up against. You get an under-owned Rogue Warriors, according to the top stack tool, about 8%, almost 9% higher top stack percentage than their ownership share. And then if you do get that win, even though it is low probability, I mean, about 1 in 4 chance that they end up winning this game. If you do get the win, if they do score really high, you also knock out the heavily owned chalk team on the slate. So like right away, just looking for large field MME edges, I think Rogue Warrior is the way I'm looking right now.
I like it because they're probably not going to play both teams in their lineups, so that means the ownership of Rogue Warriors is going to be lower because people are picking Invictus Gaming a lot. Now, Invictus Gaming is a tremendous team, but the advantage of Rogue Warriors is if they win, it's going to be easier to predict like what the lineup's going to look like because they're much cheaper, so you can get like the stronger positions at captain, etc. So that is one advantage of Rogue Warriors. So Jeremy, what's your take on Invictus Gaming? Because they've been really slumping, as far as I can tell. Because in that summer tournament, I was like betting Invictus Gaming to beat these teams because they were like underdogs sometimes. It's like this is the team that won Worlds a couple of years ago, right? Or maybe I have that wrong, but
no, you're right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so they used to be the best team, but they've kind of fallen a little bit. So what's been going on with IG?
So IG has Ning as their jungler, and while he was on their Worlds team that won, he's still kind of a coin flip. So he can just like pop off, or he can just feed, I guess, and just be like largely unimpactful. When they won Worlds, he flipped heads a lot of time, and they just won, and he dominated, and it was like really fun to watch. But now they have Puff and Southwind, who were not on that team, and while they're both also still very good, they're not as good as Jackie Love. I mean, Southwind's better than Baolon, but that's a different story. Another really weird thing is that the Shy has been playing super bad in the first 2 series. He has like a sub 40% kill participation. He's been dying a lot. He's just not looked good recently. But yeah, IG's kind of a coin flip team, and I would love Rogue Warriors if Rogue Warriors were starting Haro instead of Yodong a lot. But they're starting Yodong, so I have to like think about it a little bit more.
What's the difference, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what makes you feel so much better about one guy over the other?
So Haro, if you watched Haro in his spring split, like if you look at his spring split stats, he was like, I believe he was the highest. He had the highest kill participation. He carried a lot of games for a bad Rogue Warriors team. Yeah, he had a 76.7 kill participation. So he was very active early on and all throughout the games. And he had a 3.7 KDA as well, which again, on a bad team is like really good. So I just think he's a better jungler than Yodong is. And it's really weird that they're going to Yodong because, I don't know, it's just very interesting to me.
And we can't talk about Road Warriors without talking about Wei Yan. So last season, if you just starting off League of Legends, but I think he's a jungler too. He didn't use his flash when he had it up and died. And because of that, they're able to deduce that he was throwing the game. He got banned from League of Legends for 2 years. So apparently match fixing is an issue in the LPL. And I was kind of keeping an eye out for that this morning because Happy Sports was about to lose, but then they pulled it out. So I guess there goes that theory. So Jeremy, any takes on the match fixing? Because people
I
are
don't
talking
think
about
it's funny to joke about, but like OMG isn't terrible. Top is still really good, but like yeah, unless it's like really egregious, it won't get caught, and it usually is pretty egregious.
that. Yeah, definitely. I mean, in League, you can see everything they're doing, so there's not any secrets. So, um, on the other hand, I find it pretty easy to play poorly in League of Legends. So, like, it can't be that hard for a pro. All right, so the other the other game in the LPL is Edward Gaming at Suning. Edward Gaming is a really good team, but they are more tactical, I'd say. So I have this one as a little bit lower kills. And one reference that you can look at if you don't have my top sex tool is Pinnacle, because they give lines for each team skills. And I think that's a major driver of the ownership in League of Legends. So that's something definitely keep an eye on. Now, Jake, so how are you feeling about Edward Gaming and Sunning tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how much of the first LPL game I'm playing, which it looks like a lot right now. Probably going to do like 20 lineups, just 20 max this, and kind of load up on really the LPL teams. And so these teams are going to be guys that I get to in like 3-man and 2-man stacks. Or if I'm playing some Rogue Warriors, because they're a bunch cheaper, then you can just stack up either side of this game with the captain, a little bit more expensive team. And like you said, Alex, you're going to be able to get some higher quality players if you go with Edward Gaming or Suning, and then with the Rogue Warriors 3-man.
Nice. Yeah, Jeremy, what's your take on these teams? I know Sunning is kind of like they've always been kind of one of the weaker teams in the LPL, it seems like, but a lot of those teams seem to be like pretty talented, and if they have bad players, they'll replace them in the off season. So how do you feel about the chances of upset there?
Yeah, I actually think Suning have looked like pretty decent this split. They've lost their last two series. Their last two series were against IG and JD. I believe they played the most series out of any LPL team. So I don't know. I really like Suning against EDG. It looks like you don't need a ton to get over the field on them, which is actually very exciting. One thing I noticed on DraftKings is that game is priced really weirdly. Like, if you look at the support position, 2 of the top 3 starting supports are in that game, and that's just weird. So a lot of this game might be what parts do you like and how much are you willing to pay for those parts, I guess. Because at least on DraftKings, on FanDuel, they're about where I would expect them to be priced, like big enough gaps. But yeah, no, I just like Suning. Not a ton, but like enough to be over the field on. Because when they go off also.
Nice. Yeah, I think that it makes a lot of sense to have shares of both, because a pretty good chance that the China games there will be the 2 highest scoring stacks, and if you just guess the right teams, you're gonna have a really good lineup. Now, one thing about Edward Gaming that I like is Junjia has been starting, and tonight GG is starting. So people who don't do their due diligence may have the wrong jungler, and that might make some lineups that are Edward Gaming stacks that have dead lineups basically. So Jake, have you kept an eye on like how many people play guys that aren't playing, because it seems to be like a significant factor?
Yeah, I mean, I should be, especially on these bigger slates. Well, I guess, it's like that with any sport, but especially a sport where, like, I feel like I see a lot of pros in these newer sports, like the guys that do 150, a ton of other stuff. Like they're more apt to like make that mistake if they don't have necessarily reliable data or they're using someone else's model. So there might be times where, like a quarter of their lineups are dead, but it would be really interesting to look into because I think, I haven't even looked into this, but I did notice that there were players that we didn't have projected to get any ownership on a 5-game, or maybe the one we talked about last week. And there was like 5 or 6 players that got, a percent or 2 ownership. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you can just nuke a few more lineups, that's just a few more lineups you don't have to compete against.
Definitely. I think, as long as you don't make a lot of mistakes, you should be able to turn a profit in League of Legends, because like people are playing guys that aren't playing and building lineups that don't have the right lineup construction. Let's talk a little bit about lineup construction, because with a 4-gamer, a little bit different, but let's talk about the game stack, because like it seems like people sometimes do it. So Jake, what's your experience with the game stacks been? Like, have you tried any this season, or like what do you try?
No, I mean, I don't think there's really a reason to try it. There's probably going to be a couple times, like what Jeremy mentioned a couple months ago when we were on a show. Like, there's going to be times where it's viable, at least, but I don't know if it's going to be more viable than the amount of people that actually still do it. Like, we see it all the time early in the slate. There's a bunch of guys, maybe it's 20, 100 entries that are game stacked, and it looks great for like 20 minutes, but you just need to get the win more often than not. So 4-game slate here, I don't think there's any reason to game stack or even play players from opposing teams, like even as a one-off. That's not really something I'm interested in on the slate.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a negative correlation between players on like the opposite sides of a game. So that's one of the bigger things you can do to have a good correlation in your lineup, is just not play players playing against each other. So it is a little bit more viable in the best of ones, I think, because there's no chance of a 2-0, which just kills the losing team. And also a little bit more variance because it's one game, but this tonight is best of 3. So I'm pretty much scratching that off, even though Rogue Warrior and Invictus Gaming, there's like a decent chance that both teams like have decent scores, but not banking on that at all. So Jeremy, any game stacks you play?
No, and on topic of the weirder construction, lineup construction, the big 50K to first LEC opener had the weirdest lineup construction I've ever seen win in the $15 50K to first. I would say don't do that. Just like don't do that. You're donating money like way often. This is just wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like people who there's gonna be a lot of people playing League of Legends that don't know the strategy. And if you're watching this show, you're gonna know more than a lot of people, because like if you just use a lineup optimizer and you don't set it the right way, you're gonna get these game stacks, and they're probably not a good idea. So we're gonna actually build some lineups here in a minute here. So we'll show you some of the tools that are behind the paywall if you're not already a member. You guys, any final thoughts on the slate before we start building? Jake, what are you thinking?
Yeah, just I mean, I'd be interested to hear your take, Alex. You play a ton of sports. Like, how soft do you actually think League of Legends is? Obviously not in the high stakes. Well, maybe it is for you in the high stakes, but for us mortals who might be profitable in a couple of sports here and there, like how it seems like a pretty easy sport to pick up, even though I haven't been having success lately. Like, how soft actually is League of Legends still?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly how to quantify it, but like one of the things I like about League of Legends is like there's so many like smaller slates, and like there are only like so many good lineup combinations, and like if everyone's entering the same lineups, it kind of reduces your variance a little bit, because like you might not win 50K when you win first, but your chances of getting first are a lot higher. So I like that about it. As far as how soft it is, like every DFS sport, if you find the right tournaments, is pretty good. So the like big $15 is going to be really soft. The like $333 is going to be tough. So especially like if you can enter the under $5 contests too, those are usually good. And of course, head-to-heads, if you can play against the right people, like that's the easiest way to make a profit, because you have such a big edge with no risk. So, Jeremy, what are your thoughts on the contest selection and like how soft the game is, and maybe even like FanDuel versus DraftKings, because I know FanDuel is a little bit smaller, So maybe some of the sharks know swim there.
Yeah, the thing with FanDuel is that you need 3 teams on FanDuel, so you're already killing like a lot of dupes just by needing 3 teams, especially on like 2-game slates. On 4-game slates, sometimes you're gonna want to play like 4-2-1s on like everywhere, because again, you're just gonna be more different. I do better on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel, but that's because a lot of the times I'm just being greedy to get what I want on FanDuel, and I need to figure out why I'm doing that. But the thing with both things in terms of contest selection, for me, a lot of it's you need to find what works best for you. If 150 doesn't work out for you, play 20 maxes. If 20 maxes don't work out for you, play 3 maxes or single entries. But the important thing is you need to find out what works best for you and what wins you more over the long term. For me, that's 20 maxes usually. So also overlay. If you're awake, there's overlay on both sides. So like that's what I like to do. Like last night there was overlay on a $20. I played it, and I was getting $23.75 for free. I was like, this is great. I would love to do this every single time. So if you're awake, play the overlay. It's literally free money.
That's definitely true. So it's kind of a interesting because it's like the contests don't fill, then they're smaller the next day, so that kind of sucks. But it's great when you get in and it doesn't fill. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And all right, let's start building some lineups here. So I'm gonna show you guys who are watching some of the stuff behind the paywall. This is the top stacks tool. This is what I designed to really help with hand building, because it has kind of like metrics to help you determine the best teams. And then it has my projections for the starting lineups on the same page as well. And then, of course, Fantasy Cruncher is also a huge part of my process too. But we're going to just hand build today. So we've been talking so much about this Rogue Warriors Invictus gaming game and how that's probably going to be the highest kills. So Jeremy, are you going to be starting off your lineups with IG versus Rogue Warriors tonight, or are you looking at other games as well to be your kind of main stack?
I think you would be wise to start with looking at this game, mostly IG, of course. It's going to be popular, but sometimes you just need to like eat the chalk. And tonight's probably going to be a time where you need to be pretty even with the field on IG. So yeah, definitely looking at IG.
Okay, awesome. So let's start off with the IG stack. Now I think if we pick like the ADC or mid, like they're so expensive that it might be hard to build a lineup. But like those are going to be the highest scoring on average too. So Jake, how do you like approach who you start off your lineup with as captain if you're picking IG?
Yeah, that's such a. I mean, so I want to focus on the ADC or mid, but it's such a high price and such a chalky team. I just like maybe it's a mental thing with League of Legends. I'm trying not to dupe as much, but trying to find a right balance, because like if you dupe with a few people, that's not the end of the world in a 50K to first tournament. But when you play an expensive chalky captain on a chalky team, like you're just going to be funneled into kind of the same lineup construction. So I'm fine doing it as long as we can get a little bit different with our secondary stack here, whether it's 2-man or 3-man or what.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like picking Puff or Rookie funnels you into a certain lineup construction, which isn't necessarily bad. It will be like highly likely that your lineup has a great chance of finishing first, but you might do more. So it's kind of a trade-off. So I'll just pick Puff arbitrarily here. Now, Jeremy, of the other IG players, who are you looking at to complete your stack?
So just a lot of it has to do with ownership. And I'm seeing that Ning and Southwind are the 2 lowest projected ownership individuals. For me, Ning, I think a lot of people don't like playing Ling. He's still a coin flip, and that's very accurate, and he could go out and feed. But if he's going to be the lowest owned individual from IG, I think he's someone that I know can perform well. So I'm going to look that way quite a lot.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And Jake, who would you pick the 4th guy if we're doing a rookie or the shy here?
Let's go with the shy, just because it's like we're just spending all of our salary here. So like I said, I'd be more likely to differentiate at one spot. I think a lot of IG stacks are going to have both rookie and puff, whether it's in the captain spot. But then you're kind of handcuffing yourself with what you can do with the rest of your lineup. So let's go with the shy.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll give us some flexibility with the other guys. So I like it. Now, it looks like Edward Gaming might be out of our price range as well. So let's see. T1 is actually like surprisingly expensive tonight. Now, this is a really tough matchup versus DRX, but T1 is coming off the championship here. Jeremy, how are you fitting in T1 into your strategy tonight?
Probably less than DRX, honestly. Something that when I was looking into this last night, or when I was watching LPL this morning, I guess, is that DRX's like just overall team play was really good in spring, and they were also like really good in the midseason cup. They should have advanced out of their group. They probably should have won their group in the midseason cup. So and T1 kind of fizzled out at the midseason cup as well. So I'm probably weighing that a little bit too much, and I haven't built yet, but I actually like DRX a little bit more tonight, especially since they're cheaper. And in this exact instance, you can fit them with IG, and which is like very exciting.
That's definitely true. So we can just plug in DRX. Whoops, I picked the wrong guy. So Chovy, Deft, and then the only choice we have to make is which team do we want. So this is a tough one because if we pick DRX, there's going to be that correlation where if they get the win, you're really going to need them to win to have a winning lineup here. So you might as well have a team that wins. Well, we can really pick anyone here. So Jake, how do you approach this?
Okay, so I'm trying to watch on delay here to fill out this lineup so I see where we're at. So we had from DRX, who were the two players we had?
We got Chovy and Def, so we can pick any team we want, really, other than
okay. So, all right, we're going with the 4-2-1 then. I mean, so I think the chalk way and most of the way that an optimizer will build or people will set up their builds that are using optimizers is just to put in DRX or the most expensive team, right? Which is, I mean, I guess it can't be IG, but maybe people will drop down to Edward Gaming because they don't like leaving salary on the table. And I don't necessarily like leaving salary on the table either, but I like the strategy you talked about, not necessarily playing the Africa Freaks in the, who's the other team that they're playing? I can't remember. Sandbox. So playing one of those two teams. And if this was a 150 build, since we're kind of chalky with our non-team slots, like I could see building with one unique and playing both sides of that game. So either one of those two teams, I think, is the way I would go, because then you're leaving about 1,000 on the table too.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. So honestly, like I don't feel real strongly one way or the other, but Africa Freaks are the favorite. So maybe we would go with them. And I like your point about how optimizers are really going to only pick Dragon X or Edward Gaming or T1. Edward Gaming or Dragon X. So if we pick Africa or Sandbox, we get a little unique here. So that's an interesting strategy. I like it. All right, let's do another lineup. Now, it sounds like you guys both like the Rogue Warriors, right?
Yeah. A little bit, yeah.
So that's kind of the risky team to stack. If you do stack Rogue Warriors, this is a point I think it gets overlooked a little bit, but so they have a 24% chance of winning, but of that 24%, they're going to be the top stack 13% of the time. So like the odds where if they win, they're the top stack are way higher than the other teams where it's like Africa Freaks has a much higher chance of winning, but they have a much lower chance of being the top stack. So what I'm getting at here is that the projections of Rogue Warriors are going to be lower than some of these other teams with a higher chance of being top stack. And if you make them your 4 stack instead of a different team, which like an optimizer might funnel you to, you can get an advantage because when you do get the win with that team, they're going to be scoring high. So, Jake, who are we starting our lineup off with here?
Yeah, let's see here. My highest owned guy, I can't pronounce it. ZW. How do you pronounce that, Jeremy? Help me out here.
You can just say Zwooji.
Zwooji. Yeah, we're gonna go with him. The
Nice.
ADC. So I've got him in a bunch. We don't necessarily have to put him in captain, but I've got him in a bunch of captain spots in my 20, and then if not that, he's basically in all of my Rogue Warrior stacks here.
Nice, man. I like it. Yeah, picking the ADC is always a good strategy because most offensive characters for sure. Now I haven't been following the trends this season, but I heard ADCs got buffed even since last season. So Jeremy, any takes on that so far?
It's going to be short-lived because the item that AD carries are abusing is getting nerfed for the range users. So expect AD carries to be able to have some, I don't know what word I want to use. Like they're allowed to do things currently that they won't be allowed to do in a few patches.
Did they put the same patch for the whole split?
No. The current patch is 10.11, and on 10.13 they're gonna make the changes to Death Stance, which is the item that AD carries are abusing right now because it's really good. Yeah.
Nice.
So that'll probably be, if I had to guess, like a month or so before they get to 10.13.
It's interesting. Like, is there a lag time between like when the patch goes live on the server and when they start using it for tournaments?
Yeah, there is. Sometimes it's like a week. Like say 10.13's out for a week. They have to make sure that it's like stable and that nothing else actually needs to be hot fixed. And then once everything's pretty stable, and then they'll roll it out for pro play.
Nice. So that's definitely something to keep track of because it does have effects on the dynamics of the game here. So, all right. So, Jeremy, who are we gonna fill out our lineup here for Rogue Warriors?
Let's see, Rogue Warriors. The second guy, weirdly enough, that I like on Rogue Warriors is Holder, and that's because the Shy has been playing pretty poorly. A lot of teams have been attacking the Shy in the first few series that IG have played, and I think that's actually like been pretty smart and been largely effective. Even if it hasn't led to game wins, they've definitely been kicking the Shy pretty down. So I think Rogue Warriors could look to do that again, and I like Holder, who had some pretty solid performances in spring as well.
Nice. I like it. Yeah. And one other thing I'll mention is that if you're just looking at this draft screen, like you might not even realize that Holder is starting because let's see, Crazy is priced higher, and he has. Usually they do that if a guy's likely to start, but it looks like they both played last game, so that the substitution risk isn't really something I factor into my strategy very much. Jeremy, like, do you ever try to avoid people because they might get subbed or not?
Like oftentimes it's the opposite. If people are worried that they might get subbed, they might be less likely to play them. So I will be like, all right, they're 12% instead of 25%. I'll just play more of them. And if they went 2-0, then a popular team might have a lower owned guy on it. And that's really good. And I like that a lot. I like taking advantage of like riskier substitution risks.
Nice. Yeah, and you're kind of parlaying the fact that they win already. So if they're doing well in the games, there's less likely going to be a substitution. Now, I really like Wu Ming tonight because if you're just looking at this draft screen, you're going to click Ruby because it looks like Wu Ming hasn't even played. But he's confirmed starting tonight. So I think that we might see some dead lineups. Now, this might be wishful thinking. We'll see how it all shakes out. But that's kind of where I'm leaning there. Jake, support or mid here? Or 80s, sorry. Support or jungle for our last guy?
I do have the jungler that Jeremy is not too fond of. He's one of my higher exposed guys, making me a little bit nervous. 6,200 though. I think we can afford that and maybe go with another mid-tier team here.
Awesome. I like it. So we got 7K left per player, so we can get pretty much anyone we want, I think. So, Jake, how do you complete this lineup here?
Yeah, so I think we're already different enough. Like if you're thinking about like projection, ownership, and correlation, like 4-man Rogue Warrior stack is not going to be that popular. And so like I would be looking to get a 4-3 here if we can. And it just basically play the highest projected team. Especially if this were like an entry into one of the higher higher dollar tournaments, like the 444 or whatever they have going tonight. I would just stack it up with the chalk filler team. So looking at some of the better value teams, Rogue Warriors is actually one of the better value teams, but obviously we have them. Let's go with Dragon X. You want to try that one out? Did we do that for the last team?
Yeah, that was our secondary stack last time.
Are we even going to get close to filling up the salary? Because I don't want to leave too much salary on the table, but they look pretty decent to me. Otherwise, we could go with Edward Gaming. What do you guys think about that?
I like it.
So I think Dragon X is like I guess I would just rather go with a team that has a higher chance of being the top stack. Yeah. So like they're not bad values, but if we're going for Edward Gaming certainly is the most likely. It might be kind of like a chalky build. So it's like, do we want to play the double upset and go Suning, or maybe we would pick T1 and we can get really good players with a good chance of winning. So I'm a little torn. I'll probably have some different builds here. Jeremy, which way would you lean for one entry here?
Yeah, if I were playing one entry, I would just lead towards EDG because I do like them a lot still, and LPL games tend to be higher scoring. It probably will be a more popular way to build Rogue Warrior stacks, but we've already established that you can still 4-2-1 in the situation if you do want to and have a team one-off, or maybe you do want to get a little bit more exotic and play like an AD carry, like maybe Teddy at AD carry instead of Hope. There are still ways to get different while making your lineup still like very strong.
Nice. Yeah, I like picking Edward Gaming, I guess. I think like if people are building a lineup in an optimizer, which is about probably half the lineups, they're probably going to end up more with Edward Gaming as their 4 stack, just because these guys are going to be projected so much higher. So I think that swapping that is a decent strategy. So we got Mako, and now we can either go with Edward Gaming or we can go with a one-off. Now, I kind of like picking a T1 here because they have a good chance to win, and we know that the LCK is more tactical. The teams usually score pretty well to win. But then Africa Freaks is like only 3% less likely to win. Maybe that gives you some lower ownership. So, Jake, how do you make this decision here?
I would probably just lean toward, if I was hand building here, and had limited lineup. So if I'm like 20 maxing or put this in the higher dollar tournament, I would just be looking to get the correlation, because you're probably not going to have to be perfect. You're not necessarily going to see the optimal win that. So I would just look at Edward Gaming. But if, let's say you have a bunch of different Rogue Warrior Edward Gaming stacks, say you have like 5 or 6 different ones, then I would probably look to 4-2-1 and one off the team with, like you said, T1 or someone like that. So I guess it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your portfolio of lineups. But if this were a single entry or 3 max, I would just take the correlation play.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. So let's just go with Edward Gaming. Then we lock in the win if we get Hope and Mako to have good games. And we have a really solid lineup that we have one stack that's a little bit less popular. So I think that that should be good. Now, one thing I'll mention to you guys is that I'm still figuring out the ownership a little bit. I found like the best way to approximate the ownership for team is to like average the ownership that I have and like their top stack percentage. I don't know if you guys noticed anything like that.
Wait, so you average the top
What?
stack percentage and your ownership, like your first run of ownership? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's like I find the ownership like usually it's like in between like what I have and what the top stack percentage is, and I haven't like figured out a way to like automate that into my process. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the leverage teams will still be good leverage. I gotta go back and update this because I think Rogue Warriors will be a little bit higher on than I have them because I mean we all three of us like the team and I have them projected to be the lowest on right now. So that is something I have to fix because it's interesting because like as a projection, Rogue Warriors is the lowest because they have such a low chance to win, but the upside is huge. So, Jeremy, how do you feel like people like treat a underdog team like Rogue Warriors that's in a high paced game?
Yeah, I think that's like the last thing you just said is like it's probably going to be a high paced game. It's the LPL. Anything can happen in the LPL. We've seen minus 4,000 favorites lose. We almost saw top esports lose last night. So the thing with the LPL is that like genuinely most teams can beat most other teams. So when that happens, they're going to score a lot of points usually. And usually, especially now that we have more than just 2 games, there might be some ownership taken away from the LCK teams from like underdog LPL teams, which is nice. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just really easy to look at LPL underdogs and like them a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, like most of these teams, it sounds like most of these teams, like they're, if you want to call it 90th percentile outcomes or whether it's one standard deviation away, like they all have around the same upside, especially in the same kind of game. If we're expecting Rogue Warriors and Invictus Gaming to be a high scoring game, you're going to be wrong 75% of the time if you play Rogue Warriors, but it's not necessarily how often you get it right. It's how much money you win when you get it right. That's how I think of it.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that 25% is a significant number because that's about the number of teams that cash. So like the times that Road Warriors wins and everyone has Invictus Gaming, like you're definitely going to cash. So it's not like your chance of cashing is even that much lower because you have so much leverage over the field. So that's kind of my take on it. Let's build one more lineup and then give some final thoughts. So Jeremy, if you're going for if you're building more than a few lineups, what would be one team that you might start off with?
Well, we haven't really talked about the LCK too much, and they're probably going to be a little bit lower owned. So maybe I take a look at the Africa Freaks and be a little bit different.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, and I think that like if their lineup is different than like I have it projected here, like that's going to be a huge edge because like this is just based off what they ran last season. If they change that up, like a lot of people aren't going to be staying up to even get that. So we might not be able to project the starters with 100% certainty. But I can't say with 100% certainty that like this team could be a really high, really big opportunity if like the lineup is a little bit different than we expect. So, who on Africa would you be targeting as your captain?
I would say Keen, but I don't. He's a top laner, and that's no good. But so like Mystic, Mystic's the guy. He's the guy I trust the most. He's definitely their second best player. He's playing AD carry, so 100% Mystic.
All right, awesome. So, Jake, how would you go about if you're hand building, like picking the other guys that you're gonna pair with them?
Yeah, I mean we're getting a low owned team, so I feel like we can pretty much just try to play the best plays here. So if we put Mystic at captain, like Jeremy suggested, then I wouldn't have a problem playing SS at oh wait, is he? He's not starting, is he? No, he's the.
No.
I'm thinking of the mid laner. Who's starting for them?
So this is one
Fly,
I'm not
right?
really sure about because All In started
That's right.
the last 3 games of the season. So Jeremy, like, maybe you can help us deduce who's going to start today.
I will always lean towards Fly. He's a little bit more of a veteran. He's got probably a smaller amount of upside. Neither of these guys are like world beaters, but I think Fly probably starts slightly more often than All In does. But yeah, this is one of those situations where if you get the information, you're awake, you can take advantage of it.
Nice. So that will definitely be something to look out for. All right.
Yeah, I mean, so like I like the idea of playing this team, Africa Freaks, if you're going to be waiting up for it, if you're going to set your alarm or whatever. Like no one's really going to play this team, and then on top of that, like you should hope for some sort of lineup changes, assuming like they don't take out like their best players or something like that. But like in all sports, if you're around and you know how to make swaps and you can do it efficiently, you should be rooting for like late news, like more information, because you're probably going to be able to react to it better than most of the field, even if you just have the tools on the site.
Absolutely, yeah. And so a couple of points here. So the more different that the lamps are from what we expect, like the more dead money there's going to be. And that's a really big opportunity. And the other point is, so on my projections, if you're not a member, I'm going to just bring them up here. But I have the chance that I think someone will start. That's under my substitution percent. So if it's 0%, that means I think there's a 100% chance they'll start. And then the other thing I have, apparently it's not loading up right now, but I'll fix that, is a position projection. So you can just kind of fill that in for whoever does start, because you might not be awake to update with the starting lineups here. All right, so let's pick 2 other guys. I'd say that the jungler is the other spot where it's really hard to predict in general who's going to start for Africa. So, Jeremy, how do you feel about Spirit and Dread here?
This was like actually really weird because Spirit is wilder, I guess is the word I want to use. And they seem to like to go to Dread a lot late this season. This one's actually probably very close to a 50-50. And they've made in-series swaps between these two more than once in spring. So this might be the spot that I don't love taking a shot on without knowledge. But if I had to make a guess without knowledge on who's starting, it would probably be Spirit by like a small margin.
Yeah, so I think that caveat's good because, like, as Jake's saying, we wouldn't play this lineup if we're not going to be up for the lamps to come out. So I'm perfectly fine making lineups that have any of the other games, because like we know like the starters for those almost 100%. This game is low enough pace that there is they're not like so overpowered that you need them to win. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it. Is like I know I'm not going to be able to predict the Freaka's starting lineup that well, so I'm just not going to play them. All right, so support Jelly versus Ben, or we could get top laner Keen, Jake.
Keen.
Okay, Keen. Let's see.
Heck yeah.
Keen's
so good.
All right, so Jake.
Real quick, do you guys have a problem with your secondary stack or your primary stack? Like, do you want to split? Like, do you want to have a mid laner or ADC with each of your stacks? Like, are you okay playing like a support jungler team stack of someone? Or is that something you should try to avoid? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't have a real strong take here, but I just kind of like don't worry about the positions because
okay.
Like one thing that like when I approached this at the start is like I'm like there's an ADC support correlation because they're like playing the same lane. But then when I looked at the results, I couldn't really find anything worth worrying about. So usually all the positions are really correlated except for team. And if you just get the 4 highest scoring from your stack, then you're going to be in a good spot.
Cool.
All right. So what other stack would you be looking at here to complete this lineup?
I mean, they're a low-owned team, but they're not the lowest owned team. It looks like they're. So I'm a little bit torn here because we don't know if people are going to stay up and get the correct lineup for the Africa Freaks. We do have a 4-man, and I think they're going to be a popular combo with IG. But if we're confident we have the right lineup, like if we were submitting this 5 minutes before lock, I would just put in the best play, which is probably IG.
I like it. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Where it's like if you're assuming this team is hard to predict and you're staying up to get the advantage, you might as well go with the high percentage play. So let's puff Southwind, and if we're just going all in on the strategy, just Invictus Gaming, I think this would be a really good lineup here.
Yeah.
All right, so this is kind of like showing you how you can use tools on the side of hand build. I want to talk about Fantasy Cruncher another day, but it should be a really interesting slate. Jake, any final thoughts here?
This is a pretty fun slate. I don't know if I'm going to wake up for the to get the news of the first game here since I'm doing limited lineups. But if you are, I think like there's a decent chance one of these lower teams, one of these lower percent top stack teams ends up in the winning lineup, whether it's a 2-man or a 3-man. So if you can get the right lineups, I think you're already ahead of the field here. If you're a night owl or an early bird, I guess, depending on where you're at in the US here.
Nice, man. Yeah, like having a little bit more like hard work and dedication and being up for this lineup, that could go a long way. So if you want to really maximize your chances of winning tonight, that's a good thing to do. Not a necessity if you want to win and make a winning lineup, though. Jeremy, what are your final thoughts here?
Yeah, with how popular IG is going to be, that's going to decide like a lot of people's nights. And so for me, my thoughts are like, how comfortable am I with that? And how comfortable am I with like lower owned LCK teams? Yeah, that's something that you're always going to have to do and think about is how much LCK you like. So with this being the first slate and there being a few good games, I don't know. That's really just what I'm weighing is like how much LCK am I comfortable with in relation to how much IG I do or don't want.
Yeah, it's interesting because the LCK, it's like everyone knows they're a little bit slower, but that will reduce ownership. It gives you more upside for if you want to win outright. So if you just pick Invictus Gaming and have a 4-3, like maybe you're going to tie a lot, but still pretty hard to avoid. All right, guys. So if you aren't a member, make sure to sign up so you can get access to all the tools like the top stacks, projections, ownership. Jeremy writes a free article pretty much every day for the big slates, so make sure to read Jeremy's article on the site. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll try to do some more videos coming up here because you really have some good League of Legends slates. So good luck.